to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Very good. Okay, the first item is comments by mayor, and my only comment is to invite everybody to attend Lake Forest Day, reminding them that the carnival begins Tuesday at West Park, and the parade is Wednesday at 10 a.m. downtown. This time we'll move on to comments by city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of City Council, good evening. I have one item under my report tonight, and that is an update on the city's strategic planning process. As you recall, we've been working on this for the last 6 months. Really, it goes back to last year when you consider the feedback we received through the community survey. George Osako, our assistant city manager, has been the project lead throughout this entire initiative. Him and his project team have really done a great job continuing to synthesize the council and community feedback that we've received associated with this effort, and he is here tonight to present the latest draft in the plan, to provide an update to the council as to where we stand in the process, and to help facilitate conversation amongst the council as we seek feedback from you before we prepare the final draft of the plan for another round of public review. So with that, I'll turn it over to George.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, thank you for your time this evening. I am very excited to present the current draft of the strategic plan we've been working on over the last few months, as Manager Wisha mentioned. So real quick, I'm just going to provide a quick overview of where we've been in the process and where we're going. You may have seen this visual before. We've put it out to the public it's meant to illustrate a funnel to show where, what we've done at the very beginning of this process dating back to last summer, casting our wide net with the community survey, initializing that feedback opportunity. And as we've been getting more granular, moving down the process to getting towards a final draft later this fall. So just kind of going step by step through the process, the community-wide survey again was last summer. We got over 1,400 responses. It was a statistically valid analysis we're very proud of. Offered a lot of great feedback, looking at the priorities in the community, what folks were interested in, what they're concerned about, and also showed that we have a high level of satisfaction for city services, which was a great feeling certainly for our extremely professional staff, but also validated the work that we do. And it also made my life difficult. Dana and I have been working subsequently to work with our colleagues and find ways to improve in the interim while we're doing this process. And I told them we have to be very nitpicky with the areas of focus for what we actually look at, because it really was a lot of high marks from our public. That led to this last spring with our public workshops. If you recall, we had a flurry of meetings in late April and early May that started with a council workshop, which we had, I think, a great conversation with the council to kind of set the stage for that. We had a stakeholder focus group of over 70 attendees that had a very lively discussion, keying in on some main themes and areas of focus that we thought were important to look at. And then that resulted in, a couple days later, some public engagement sessions for the general public. We had one in person, 2 online for those that might not have been able to attend in person. Again, those were very lively discussions with our facilitator. No city staff were present to ensure it was an open conversation. And that brings us to analyzing that data. So I want to say that we feel very strongly that this whole process has been public input focused, and all the information we've gathered has really informed the draft that you see in front of you. And we put together an ad hoc staff, multidisciplinary staff group that worked together to help synthesize that information and usher the process forward, so we had something that we can bring forward for public discussion and consumption. And that group, I just want to call them out because they did a lot of great work and put a lot of time behind this, included members of our executive staff, Dana Olson, Elizabeth Holub, and Kathy Zerniak. From the police department, Kevin Zelk. From the fire department, Andy Rick. From Public Works, Jim Lockefeer. And from Parks and Recreation, Todd Nahigian. So I want to thank them all for their time and efforts. They all did a great job bringing their expertise and knowledge in their respective areas to help put together our main new content areas that you saw, and then also eventually leading towards objectives and initiatives in those respective areas. And so that brings us to, in July, we had our first kind of actual draft content review Dana put together a survey for the public to give us some feedback on the content areas that we had put together, those 7 categories that you've seen. We had 98 respondents there, just too shy of 100, I'm sorry to say, but it was great feedback for us, again, reassuring a lot of the work that we did, and again, using that public input to help guide the final draft. And then here we are today with our first draft. And I just want to reiterate that this document is still a work in progress. We still have much more work to do. It's not going to look like what the actual final draft for your consideration will look like. Dana and her team are working hard on establishing kind of the final content, so it's both visually appealing, easy to understand, but also actionable for us to use. And there will, of course, be more commentary on the process and that kind of thing. What you're seeing is just the meat and potatoes of it for our discussion and further finalization. And again, so those focus areas that I referenced. So I think this is a good illustration of what the current plan has and what we've proposed to you. So on the left, you'll see the highlights here of fiscal stewardship and business and economic vitality. Those are highlighted because they're the only ones that remained exactly the same from the previous plan to the proposed new plan. The highlights on the right are all the new category areas, all of which were certainly included in some capacity before. We've talked about, Patrick had been up here saying, this is not really a complete reset, but more of a refresh, and looking at just fine-tuning some of the things and going back to the public and saying, where could we do better and have more focus in this new plan? And so we felt like from all the feedback we gathered, some of these things maybe deserve their own respective category. Some of them might have been mixed and maybe changed over the last 5 years, so that's what you're seeing there. And I'll walk through each of these quickly in the upcoming slides. So starting off with fiscal stewardship, and just for some maintenance for all these slides, we have a general description, again, not a final description, but it's just meant to show what the idea is behind that focus area. There's one example objective. Each category has 3 to 5 objectives that we all think are very important. This is just for the sake of discussion to highlight for the public. And on the right, you'll see some quotes that we felt like showed some of that public feedback in July that we did for the content areas that kind of reinforce why these initiatives were put on this plan. With fiscal stewardship, I'll start off by saying this order is not meant to be, a category, a ranking per se, but we do think that symbolically there is something to be said about what order these items are put in. And so fiscal stewardship is one of those things that we feel like is foundational to the city. It's a core function. Infrastructure is another example, where those are core city services, important things that without those, the other things that we focus on might not be possible, right? And so that's why fiscal stewardship comes up first and foremost, as it was in the previous plan. So again, looking at long-term fiscal stability of the organization, long-term financial planning is really important to what the city does and has done historically. Just some quotes here. This is key to maintaining the quality of living in Lake Forest. I believe that fiscal responsibility is a critical issue in today's environment. Again, this is a theme that we saw throughout. Certainly the council you guys all gave us that feedback during the council workshop in the spring. I'd mentioned infrastructure and city facilities. You might recall there was a content area on multimodal transportation and infrastructure. There was some confusion around what that meant, and that regional transportation issues have changed over the last few years. The focus might have been different, but certainly we heard a lot from the public about a focus on underground utilities, on roads and bridges, and maintaining that infrastructure for our current and future needs. This was a main theme throughout the process. So this was reworked to focus more on infrastructure, and then of course all the facilities the city has, the current needs that we have, but of course, as we know, there have been recent discussions about new facilities as well and what that could mean for the city. So we felt like that was very important to include in here. Again, quickly, this quote, extremely vital to keep up with infrastructure, maintenance, and invest in it so Lake Forest remains a beautiful, well-functioning place to live. For public safety, this is one of those categories that if you go back to the survey, it was extremely clear that it was a top priority of the public. This maintained throughout all the public engagement processes. It was very, very clear. And it was mixed in the previous version. So we felt like it was pretty straightforward that it should deserve its own separate call out in the new plan. I'd like to point out too, Kevin and Andy worked very well together in that they teamed up on this and looked at it as a collaborative initiative. It wasn't just police or fire separate. There are certainly items that are respective for police and fire, but they really worked together to make sure it was city-focused public safety, which I'm very proud of, and I think this illustrates that very well. Again, a couple quotes here. I feel safe in Lake Forest and appreciate that Lake Forest ensures our safety and security and promotes community-based crime prevention initiatives. People really felt like this was important to them. Again, high priority in the survey, so makes a lot of sense. Recreation and community well-being, another one that just kind of continue to show up, whether it was talking about adult programming or if it was about special events to bring people together. The theme here is just that, is having things for families and people to do in the city. And the community well-being aspect is about that togetherness and focusing on things like open spaces and overall quality of life. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Dana can correct me, but parks and trails was one of the top categories of why people love to live in Lake Forest. So that's another kind of illustration of why it's so important to our public to have something like this in the plan called out separate. Very important to me, and I'm retired, but I also loved having the outdoor spaces for our children and future children in the community. Kind of another theme that comes up about future families and how they'll take advantage of the amenities in the city. Visual character and development. Again, something that certainly was in the previous plan, but reworked a little bit to look at some of the feedback that we heard about, the fact that this city, of course, has a very historic and unique nature that makes it an incredibly special place to live, right? And so we know that that's the case. We've heard a lot about that. And also about balancing the way we approach development in the future and making sure that we're still using the processes that we have so successfully over the years and honoring that tradition, but again, having a balanced approach moving forward. And so this is what that content area is for. Greatly support this position. Historic preservation is important to maintain while keeping up with the times. Again, that kind of balanced approach moving forward. Business and economic vitality, the other focus area that was unchanged. Again, a lot of conversation and feedback about maintaining our business community, ensuring that it's economically viable, enticing to visit for both residents and visitors. There's been a lot of changes in the CBD over the last few years and other commercial areas in the city. So it's an important category, we feel, and that's why it remained unchanged. I'll read the top quote here. Business and economic vitality are important to me as they build on the character and financial stability of the community. You'll also find that a lot of these, there are integrations. Some might think that one initiative or objective should be somewhere else. We tried to take a balanced approach to that, and we're open to feedback on how some of those initiatives could be moved around in the plan. And last but certainly not least is community engagement. This is another one, again, I think back to that initial council workshop meeting. But also we've heard throughout, I think staff people too, and when we interact with the public at different events, we hear it a lot. People want to know about what's going on. Certainly there's the one-way communication about how the city communicates with the public and all the different forms that we use to communicate, but it's also about that engagement and about having people be part of the decision-making process. I think there's no better example, right, than this process itself. I'm very proud of the fact that we've had multiple opportunities for public engagement and interaction that have informed this work. But that's what people are getting at, is they want to know what's going on and they want to know how they can get that information. Another aspect is transparency. We think we do a great job with providing information to the public, but as technologies change and things evolve, we want to continue to look for opportunities to make sure that information is available to the public. And that's why that's called out as a separate focus area. So some next steps. Again, we're in this review process. We're going to hopefully get some feedback tonight in the next couple days. We're poised here pretty quickly, I think as soon as tomorrow, to put out another public feedback opportunity like we did with the content areas, only for the plan that you've all seen in the agenda. And we're hoping we get some great responses there that'll help allow us to continue to refine and finalize this draft before a final for your consideration is brought later this fall, likely at some point next month. So that's sort of where we're at this point, and with that, I'm open to any questions or feedback you have on the plan that's in front of you.
Are there questions? Yes.
Great presentation. Thank you so much, George. Just the question is, how long are you going to be leaving this public opportunity for people's comment? I've heard a lot of comments, Lake Forest tends to be on vacation right now for the next couple weeks. So just curious, how long, and will you then kind of ramp up communication again come September 1st?
That's a really great question. I think the last time we did about 2 weeks, Dana, and so we could talk about it certainly. I think the plan would be to do another maybe 2-week opening, but we could revisit if we feel like that maybe we're not getting enough feedback. We can extend that out. There really is no major rush, but that's the idea.
I don't think 2 weeks right now in the middle of August is going to get you the response rate that you're looking for. I would encourage you to perhaps extend that and maybe do another push right after Labor Day. Final comments, please. I just think to give everyone a good opportunity.
Perfect. And if I may, one thing I forgot to note is that, as you know, you've seen the icons that we have for each focus area. That's a really critical part of our budgeting process and the way that we update the council and the public on our plan. Dana and her team will be working on updated icons to put in the plan. And the idea will be for the next budget process to use that and to make sure that we're tying all the work we do to this plan over the next 5 years. So just wanted to touch on that as well.
Are there other questions or comments? Well, that was beautifully presented. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to offer an opportunity for citizens to address the City Council. Please step up, state your name and address.
Hey, excuse me. Hello, I'm Diane. And just a very quick positive comment. I just,
Yeah, I didn't hear name and address, please. Your name and your address.
right, but what I have learned is I don't have to give that, but I do live in Lake Forest, and my name is Diane.
Okay.
Thank you. And you can defer to council, because that's what I learned in Lake Forest 101. Anyway, back to my subject, which is I just wanted to thank the council for updating the bike path. It's absolutely beautiful. I understand it was done early, which probably means it was done under budget. And it's just very smooth. It's a nice ride, and I appreciated it. So thank you.
Well, thank you. There are others that would like to address the council. Okay. Hearing none, we'll move on to the next item, which is a presentation from the Public Works Committee. So I'll turn this over to Public Works Chairman Alderman Goshgarian.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A few weeks ago, I reached out to the city manager and to you, Mayor, and given the weather pattern that we have been in all summer long, I thought it would be helpful if we could get an update from Public Works in terms of how we're doing with the stormwater management, some of the projects we've completed, some of the ones that we're currently doing, and looking forward. I thought it would be a good chance to look back and see how we've addressed some of these issues and how we're moving forward, and just keeping the residents informed in terms of what we're doing on some of the larger projects. And I thought it'd be helpful. Mike Thomas is not here tonight. Jim Lockefeller, the Assistant Director of Public Works, is here. So I've asked Jim to pull together some information and share it with us.
Well, thank you, Alderman Goshgarian, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. I did prepare just a few very brief slides this evening to review exactly what Alderman Goshgarian has requested, and wanted to start with our 2024 rainfall totals, as well as some significant events we've experienced this year. And I probably do not need a chart to explain that this year has been quite a bit of rain. If you've been watching your grass, talking to your landscapers, talking with our park section supervisor, Rich, it's about twice a week where they have to go in and cut just because we get that consistent rain, and more expected tonight, early this morning. So looking at 2024 compared to 2023, 2022, definitely above average there. 2021, I listed, but you'll see actually the extreme side of that where it's very low. That was a year where we were experiencing some drought-like conditions. You'll see on the chart too, I should have prefaced this to say that east side of town, we have a rain gauge at the water plant. That's where that data is coming from in inches there. And then on the west side of town, that's our municipal services building, where we have a rain gauge as well. In our world, though, rainfall totals absolutely tell part of the story, but also, almost more importantly, is how the rain exactly falls in terms of duration and intensity. If we get a lot of rain over a week, 10 days, nice steady pace, generally we're okay. It's the rain where we receive a couple inches in a day or two, or back-to-back events where there's multiple inches. And as you can see, actually, on the bottom chart, 2024 rain events this year, there's been a few, and specifically I'll highlight the June 22nd to the 23rd, followed by more rain on the 24th and 25th. But that 22nd to 23rd, where at the water plant we recorded over 4 inches, that was a significant event. And what was encouraging to see from a public works department perspective, is in terms of our response to that sort of flooding event. In years past, I would estimate we would get anywhere from 30 to 40 calls, streets flooded, basements, yards, just about everything. I believe we got 10 total, a couple streets, few basements, and a couple yards, and I think that's truly a testament to projects and investments made to our stormwater management program and those capital projects. I'll review that on the next slide. But also, I certainly want to highlight operations as well, whether it's the street section, constantly having the street sweeper out and taking care of the roads, making sure our catch basins are clear, and then water and sewer actually going into the basins and cleaning those out. It's truly a testament to the work that they do as well. And transitioning to those stormwater projects again, wasn't the intent to go line by line to review these, but if you look back to 2017, significant capital investments have been made to our stormwater management infrastructure, whether it's a storm sewer improvement project for which we have upsized some storm sewers that were identified on our stormwater management plan as being undersized, or some ravine improvements. Over the years, we have, past and present city councils have invested close to $30 million in this infrastructure. And again, returning to those 2024 totals where we've experienced some significant events this year, and the fact we have not had, the typical calls that we're accustomed to seeing, these projects are working. And it's exciting from our standpoint where during an event, after an event, lead project manager Bernard Pondexter, Byron Coots, the superintendent of engineering, our operating section staff investigating these project areas, they're working as designed. And again, it's just something that's really exciting. I did also want to note that last line, close to $20 million, I guess closer to $19 million, is funding that was not local city funds. It was grant funding, state funding, large chunk of that being state funded via the Deer Path and Route 41 project, but nonetheless, I think that's a very important figure that I know in Public Works, that's something we're very proud of, the fact that we're able to make these improvements, not taking a huge hit out of the local city capital fund. Lastly, just one final thing I wanted to touch on was the Deer Path Park Community Project, where truly a large catalyst of that was related to the existing field conditions and the historic flooding that occurred there. And just, again, high level, 2021, 2022, even, again, going back to 2021, in a year where historic drought, well below average totals of rain, there were cancellations in April and May still related to some rain that occurred. 2022, even more significantly, when you talk April, May, and October, multiple cancellations. Anecdotally, again, talking to the park supervisor, he felt that those fields were shut down. In talking with our Parks and Recreation staff, I think there was an estimate between 15, potentially pushing past 20 events canceled in 22, strictly related to field conditions. And what's exciting this year is related to flooding, 0 closures this year. There have been cancellations related to things like lightning, or if a private organization had to cancel for various reasons, maybe something with the players. But from a true field condition standpoint, the field has been working exceptionally, and there have been no cancellations, which is very different from immediately before the project. So again, something we're very excited about as well. That was it. That was the information I wanted to prepare for you guys this evening, so I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
This was great. Thanks for capsulizing all of it, and especially giving us the information about how much rain and how it impacts what you can do with it. What's next?
What's next? So on the chart, I'll flash back to it very quickly. 2 projects listed there. We have the Ahwahnee Storm Sewer Improvement Project, Ahwahnee Road, and actually I think a little bit of Ahwahnee Lane too. And then from a ravine standpoint, adjacent to the college, that's the Seminary Ravine System. We have some exposed sanitary sewer, as well as adjacent to Sheridan Road, a failing outfall. 2 projects, very important from a prioritization standpoint, that we're excited to move forward about. definitely the Awani Road, Awani Lane one is all about, I made a previous comment about some undersized storm sewer that we're aware of. It's identified on our stormwater management kind of capital plan that we use to guide and select those projects. That is truly that next priority that was after the Borough project that was recently completed. So those are the next two.
And just to finish, these are budgeted and scheduled and happening.
Correct. Timing, Awani Road, we're looking at potentially starting that in the winter, January, February, probably closer to February, and then Superintendent Coots, I was chatting with him earlier, and he thought it was about a 3 to 4 month project, maybe finish up late spring, early summer. Seminary and Sheridan Road, we're still working. The great news is we got a $1 million grant award from the federal government through Congressman Schneider's office. We're working, it's administered through the EPA, so we're still working through that process. Our hope is that we can start the project this upcoming summer and look to conclude it in the fall. We're keeping our fingers crossed through that, but we got to work our way through the grant cycle on it.
Mr. Mayor.
I have a question for you. This is the other side of the rain story. So can you give us a general estimate of the effect this has had on water revenues?
Absolutely. So I would not be able to cite specifics, but for example, going back to the 2021 data that I showed where rainfall was extremely low, there's two sides to that coin. There's the water conservation, but then also our water fund and how we fund capital improvements to the water plant, to the water distribution system is funded via revenue generated from selling water from the water plant. So in a year where we've had a lot of rain and irrigation systems may or may not be running as much, that certainly have an impact to just how much revenue is being generated, and something we work with Finance Director Holobon to watch that very closely.
And I'll just jump in to add a point to that, I think an important aspect to that conversation is that part of the city's long-term financial planning is maintaining healthy reserves in the water fund, knowing that water consumption can be a bit volatile based on the weather in any given summer, while conversely most of our costs associated with operating a water system are fixed. But because we're able to maintain those reserves, we don't find ourselves in a position where if we have an exceptionally wet summer and we know water revenues are down significantly, that we're finding immediate financial pressures on the operating budget or calling into question capital projects planned for that year. So just, again, another example where I think long-term financial planning suits us very well. But to Jim's point, I think it's going to be a rough year for water revenue.
Very good.
Worth noting, though, I mean, we're looking at some very large projects that we've accomplished. Almost a total of $30 million, which is a pretty substantial investment, and much to the staff's credit, obtaining almost $19 million in grants. It's important for the public to understand that there are still ongoing projects that we do on a yearly basis. We do the I&I, the smoke testing, to look for stormwater crossover with sewage. We are relining storm sewers. We're doing water main replacement. So these are just the blips, and they're rather substantial. But when I joined council about 5.5 years ago, the largest discussion that I heard was we have stormwater problems, and we definitely did. And I think we've come a long way to mitigate those problems. And a lot of this is driven by community input and going through what we're doing now in terms of long-term strategic planning and the importance of public participation. But additionally, looking at how the city, again, speaking to the mayor and the city manager's long-term capital planning projects, doing projects like this and knocking them off one by one does allow us a level of flexibility when we move into some other larger projects which are potentially pending down the road, like a public safety building, and or 8, 10, 12 years in the future, like a new recreation department. And so there's a very long-term, thoughtful planning process planning process that goes into this. And Jim, I want to thank you for your presentation, because I think this really shows the public and we as city council members that we are addressing needs as they come up, and we're being very responsive, and more than anything else, we want to hear from the public and what their thoughts are. So thank you, Jim.
Very good. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
You.
Great, thanks, Jim.
The next item on the agenda is items for omnibus vote consideration, of which there are 12. So if any of the aldermen would like anything removed or taken separately, please let me know after I read the items. Item 1, approval of the July 15th, 2024 City Council meeting minutes. Item 2, approval of the check register for the period of June 29th through July 26th, 2024. Item 3, consideration of a request to waive the fidelity bond requirement in connection with holding a raffle in the city of Lake Forest for the Spirit of 67 Foundation, approval by motion. Item 4, consideration of an ordinance amending the City of Lake Forest City Code regarding Class C1 and C3 liquor license, first reading and if appropriate, final approval. Item 5, approval of a resolution conveying and dedicating city property to the state of Illinois for the Waukegan Road and Wesley Road intersection improvements. Project between the City of Lake Forest and the State of Illinois Department of Transportation for highway purposes for the sum of $0, and authorizing the mayor and the city manager to execute associated documents on behalf of the City of Lake Forest. Item 6, approval of an ordinance dedicating and accepting city property for the Waukegan Road and Wesley Road intersection improvements project for road purposes, and authorizing the mayor and city manager to execute associated documents on behalf of the City of Lake Forest. Item 7, approval of a Public Works Committee recommendation to award a bid for the North Beach Pavilion roof replacement project to Ridgeline Roofing in the amount of $35,000 to include a 10% contingency in the amount of $3,500 for a total amount of $38,500. Item 8, approval to waive the bidding process and authorize a contract to rebuild the soda kiln at Sterling Hall in the amount of $39,609. Item 9, approval of a service contract to Libertyville Tile and Carpet for the Recreation Center carpet and flooring replacement project in the amount of $46,902 to include a project contingency in the amount of $5,000 for the grand total amount of $51,902. Item 10, consideration of the donation of the Veterans Monument in Veterans Park from the McKinlock Post Foundation, and directing the city manager to execute the donation agreement, approval by motion. Item 11, consideration of ordinances approving the recommendations from the Building Review Board for 1175 Old Colony Road and 632 Grandview Lane and 227 West Onwencia Road, first reading and if desired by the council, final approval. And item 12, consideration of an ordinance approving a recommendation from the Zoning Board of Appeals in support of zoning variances for 1191 Prairie Avenue, first reading and if desired by the City Council, final approval. Are there any items that you would like removed or taken separately? Hearing none, can I have a motion to approve the 12 omnibus items as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay, this will be a roll call vote.
Alderman Novak.
Aye.
Alderman Clemmons. Aye. Alderman Notes.
Aye.
Alderman Powers.
Aye.
Alderman Kashkarian.
Aye.
Alderman Levert.
Aye.
Alderman Weber.
Aye.
Alderman Walder.
Aye.
8 yeas, 0 nay. Motion carries.
Okay, the next item is old business, of which there is none this evening, followed by new business, of which there is none this evening. Are there any other items that the council members would like to discuss this evening? Hearing none. At this time, we are looking to adjourn into executive session. There will be no further business at the completion of executive session. So at this time, I'd like to ask for a motion to adjourn into executive session pursuant to 5 ILCS 120/2 parentheses C parentheses 1. The City Council will be discussing personnel. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, this will be a roll call vote.
Alderman Alderman Clemmons.
Aye.
Alderman Notes.
Aye.
Alderman Powers.
Aye.
Alderman Kashmirian.
Aye.
Alderman Levert.
Aye.
Alderman Weber.
Aye.
Alderman Walder.
Aye.
Alderman Novit. Aye. 8 yeas, 0 nay, motion carries.
Okay, at this time, we'll be adjourning into executive session. Again, there will be no further business at the completion of executive session.